Hey guys, welcome to another video for Anatomy and Physiology. In this video, we're going to be highlighting the stomach, and we're going to be looking at the general anatomy. Okay, so we're just going to be looking at the different features, starting from the outside and working our way to the inside. Okay, so on the outside, we have two major curvatures that we want to talk about first. And to see those curvatures, I want to kind of zoom out of the body. And you'll see that these two curves, so the stomach, first of all, is it's shaped like a J, right? So the J, in this case, has a curve on the inside, right here, and then there's a curve on the outside. This curve on the inside is called the lesser curvature, and this lesser curvature is on the medial side of the body. Medial meaning towards the center, towards the middle, and then the greater curvature is on the lateral aspect of the stomach. All right, and so the stomach is pretty much vertical for the most part. On taller people, it's pretty much vertical, but then for shorter people, it's a little bit more horizontal. Okay, so those are the two major curvatures of the stomach. Now let's get into the four major regions. Okay, so the first region that we have right here is called the cardiac region. Okay, the cardia, and then the second is called the fundus or the fundic region right over here. Okay, this is the most superior aspect of the stomach. And then we have the largest aspect of the stomach, which is the body, which is this whole area right here. And then fourth, last but not least, and the most inferior aspect of the stomach, this part we call the pyloric region. All right. Okay, so now let's take a look at each one of these regions and talk about some of the key features to these regions. So, as you know, leading to the stomach is the esophagus. Now, as the food comes down, the food is regulated as far as how much is allowed to go in, and that's regulated by a circular muscle called the cardiac sphincter. Okay, so this is the cardiac sphincter muscle. We have different sphincter muscles all across the body, one of them being the eyes, for example. If you shut your eyes really tight and you squint, the muscles that are causing your eyes to shut and to squint, kind of like if you're maybe expecting a surprise or something and your eyes shut down really quick, those are the sphincter muscles around the eye. Or maybe if you pucker up like you're going to kiss somebody, okay, so the muscles that cause your lips to pucker up, those are the sphincter muscles in the mouth. And so you have a circular muscle that clenches shut and opens up to allow food into the stomach. Okay, so this is the cardiac sphincter. Okay, and of course this is the cardiac region that we were talking about, and then the fundus right here. So let's take a look at that cardiac sphincter and the next sphincter. So I'm going to kind of skip over the middle part here, if you will, and I'm going to go to the next sphincter. And this sphincter again is a circular muscle. This muscle. So after food enters the stomach and your body processes it, your stomach releases gastric juices, and the muscles in the stomach help to churn up that food and process it even further. The next step is for the food to go from the stomach to go into the small intestine, or before the small intestine, actually, it goes into what's called the duodenum. And so this sphincter right here, this muscle, opens and shuts and allows a little bit of the chyme that is produced in the stomach to enter the duodenum and then go into the small intestine to be further processed so that the nutrients can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So that's the pyloric sphincter, okay? And then again, here's the duodenum. So now what we want to do is we want to peel off part of the stomach, and we want to look at the inside. We're going to go in a little bit deeper. And the stomach is actually multi-layered, right? So it has 3 layers of muscle that aid in churning up the food, churning and twisting and turning and breaking down the food further for making it easier for your intestines to squeeze out the nutrients inside. So we're going to look at the outermost layer. Okay, this outermost layer is called the longitudinal. Okay, the longitudinal muscle. Longitudinal meaning that it runs up and down. Okay, so it runs up and down the stomach, and it's continuous with the esophagus. Oops, that's the cardiac sphincter. So the esophagus, and then it runs down the stomach, and it's continuous all the way down. Okay, into the pylorus, this section over here, which we'll address in a minute. And it continues on with the duodenum. Okay, so that is the longitudinal, the outermost muscle layer, and then the middle layer is called the circular layer. I'm going to unhighlight it. So I'm going to zoom in, you can see that it's more horizontal. So it's circular. It runs around like a ring around the stomach. And of course, that muscle layer runs all the way across evenly throughout the entire stomach. And it's more intensely around the pyloric area, ending up here with the pyloric sphincter, which we talked about earlier, and that allows chyme to enter the duodenum a bit at a time. And then the innermost layer is called the oblique, and this layer right here that I'm highlighting. And you'll notice here that the obliques run oblique, so they run at an angle. They run from right to left, and they also run from left to right. So these three layers of muscles aid in churning up the food, tossing and turning. You can kind of just imagine maybe a blender. It's kind of just turning everything any which way that it needs to further break up the food. So this is the oblique, the circular muscular layer, and the longitudinal. And then on the inside, the actual stomach tissue. Okay, so this particular tissue is called the Gastric Rugae, and that's on the inside, that is. Now, one of the things that I want you to notice, let me zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so this is pretty accurate. I like this image here because you'll notice here that there's a lot of wrinkles in here, right? A lot of wrinkles inside of that stomach tissue, and that's called the Gastric Rugae. So your stomach has the ability to actually to expand like a balloon. And when your stomach expands like a balloon, this rugae here, these wrinkles actually stretch out and smooth out. And inside of these rugae, you have a lot of glands that secrete a lot of the gastric juices that your body uses to break down the foods even further. In the previous video, we called this chemical digestion. So I'm just going to mention the three chemicals that these glands secrete. First of all, one of them is called pepsin, gastric lipase, intrinsic factor, and then hydrochloric acid. And I'll leave it at that for now. So we'll discuss what exactly those gastric juices do in the stomach as far as breaking food down in a future video. Right now, we're just kind of looking at the general anatomy of the stomach. So I want to highlight this region again. So I mentioned this was one of the four major regions of the stomach. This again is the pyloric region of the stomach. So the final aspect, the fourth and final region is called the pyloric region. Okay, we mentioned that before earlier. It's the most inferior aspect of the stomach. The first region is called the antrum. Okay, and the antrum leads into the pyloric canal. Okay, and this is where leading into the pyloric canal, and then finally ending up through that particular canal where the food enters or exits the stomach and enters the duodenum. This is called the pylorus. Okay, and remember, the chyme, the food that enters the duodenum, is controlled by the pyloric sphincter. Okay, also called the gastroduodenal sphincter. Just think about that for a second. Gastroduodenal. Gastro meaning the stomach, and duodenal meaning the duodenum, or the duodenum, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So the gastroduodenal sphincter, or the pyloric sphincter, controls the opening and the closing of the pylorus, which is the actual canal itself. And just before that is the pyloric canal and the antrum, and all those regions are called the pyloric region. Okay, so last but not least, what I would like to do is I want to discuss how the stomach gets its blood supply, because again, this is a very important organ and it takes a lot of blood to keep it going. So we're all familiar with eating a heavy meal at lunch, and then you get really tired after that. If you eat a lot, that means your body has to process all that food, and that stomach needs blood it needs energy in order to process the food. And so that blood is gotten from the aorta. This is the descending aorta coming from the heart. Let me zoom out a little bit. So here's your aorta right here, and then it descends into the abdominal aorta, Now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to zoom into this particular portion right here. This is called the here it is, the celiac trunk. Okay. Now you'll notice that this celiac trunk that comes out of the abdominal aorta is splitting up into 3 branches right here. And I want to talk real quickly about these branches. This first one right here is called the splenic artery, and that of course feeds the spleen with blood. And then you have this one here called the common hepatic. So this artery feeds, anytime you see the word hepatic, that is referring to the liver. So this one goes into the liver, and you'll notice that it also branches out into this one here called the gastroduodenal artery. So again, gastroduodenal, so you can take a wild guess as to where that feeds. Okay, so the gastroduodenal area. And then last but not least, going back in, the one that we did refer to, this is the gastric artery. Okay, so this is the main artery, and as you can see here, it kind of hugs the lesser curvature of the stomach, and it feeds the stomach blood. So once the blood goes into the stomach, and it helps process, and it helps the muscles get the energy it needs to kind of churn all the food, and all the blood gets used up, it's got to drain, right? So it drains into the veins, the gastric veins, and you'll notice that these veins feed into this, let me zoom in, it feeds into this major vein called the hepatic portal vein. So all the blood that's used up in the stomach, before it goes back to the heart, it gets filtered into the hepatic portal vein, which means it gets filtered through the liver, and then after it gets filtered through the liver, it goes into your inferior vena cava, which, as you can see, goes back into your heart to get reoxygenated, and then it goes through, goes through your lungs, back to your heart, and then your aorta once again, and it continues on through that process. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that I've discussed everything that I wanted to discuss. This, again, has been the general anatomy of the stomach. I just wanted to talk about all the different features, all the things that you needed to know about the stomach in terms of, major features and their locations. And in future videos, we'll discuss in more detail the glands and the gastric juices that are secreted and their purposes in the stomach. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something new, and good luck in your studying.